So for today's session, we're going to do a bit of a quick overview, thinking about what Just2Easy is and what it can offer for your school. We'll have a look at how you can access Just2Easy, and then we'll look at some quick wins, some activities that hopefully I think you should be able to go out into your classes tomorrow if you want to and use without too much extra preparation. Those nice ways to get you started with J2E without hopefully too much trouble. And we'll have a think at the end about where we can go from here if you want any further training, and plenty of time for questions as well. So, going to crack on. What is Just2Easy? Well, Just2Easy, or J2E for short, is a set of tools within a learning platform that have been designed specifically for teaching and learning. The tools have been designed to allow you and your students to create, to share, and to learn. And what's lovely about them is that they are not a set of tools that have been designed specifically for teaching ICT. They are fully cross-curricular. They've been designed to allow you to teach the curriculum through the use of ICT. And that's why I think often it ties in so nicely with the Northern Ireland curriculum, because of that kind of cross-curricular nature. The tools are suitable from foundation stage up to the end of primary and beyond. And inbuilt within them are a number of accessibility features for any of your children that might need some extra support. And we have things, for instance, the ability to add word lists for your students, a text-to-speech and a speech-to-text function, the ability to streamline your children's launchpad or their landing page, so that they can kind of see, especially for younger children, see just what it is that you want them to see. I'll show you some of those today. They are features that we're constantly kind of looking at and updating as well. And here are the tools that you get within the Just2Easy learning platform. I'm not going to go through all of them. You can kind of see a lot of them do what they say on the tin. But just to point a few out, so we have J2 Data, which is our data handling offering, which is a set of tools starting from our youngest children going up to to database for our older children. J2 Code, also a set of tools for teaching coding, again starting with Turtle for our youngest children up to quite complicated coding for older children. We have a number of tools that are particularly suitable for kind of for use for the teachers. We're not going to go into as many of those today. They would come in part 2 of this webinar if anybody's booked onto that, or you'll be able to if not. The two main ones that we'll go into have a little look at now are JIT and J2E5, and those are our kind of content creation tools. I'm just going to see. There we go. So JIT, which I'm going to access from a launchpad because that link didn't work. So I'm going to click on JIT here. JIT is our Just2Easy infant toolkit, and it is a set of 8 tools which you can see along the top right hand side here, mostly designed for our younger learners. That being said, there are some uses for older learners too within there, and I'll kind of point those out as we go through. So just to kind of give you a really brief tour of JIT, we have JIT Write. Any of the JIT tools, when we open them, give us the option to select a background for our piece of work. It varies slightly from tool to tool, so that could be a template or a picture. So if I click on this, for instance, in Write, children don't have too many options so as to confuse them. They can choose to change the size and the style and the colour of their font. But other than that, they can just click and they can write, for instance, I went to the beach. And some of the accessibility features that I mentioned before, you can see in here. So we have our word lists here. We can use the arrows to scroll through those. Children can hear words read aloud. Crab. Or they can click to add them into their text. We have speech to text here for those children who need a bit more help getting their ideas down. And text. I went to the beach. Crab. We'll read what they've written. Very quick introduction to Write there. Paint is our tool for creating pictures, so children can paint on the page with paintbrushes or they can stamp things on. Turtle is our very beginnings of coding, so when children choose their background, they're given a little sprite that they can move around the page. I know I'm aware I'm going through these very quickly, but they should be really nice and simple to use. You can see as I'm clicking the arrows around the sprite, the code is building up on the left here. So that's coding for our very youngest learners. Then chart, pictogram and branch are all the beginnings of our data handling offerings, so quite self-explanatory really. Chart allows children to create charts and graphs. They can create blank ones from blank templates, but also they can use the templates that we have, and as they put the data in, the graph is pre-populated. And they can switch around which graph they're seeing on the left there. Pictogram allows children to create pictograms. Animate is the one we're going to come back to later. It's our stop frame animation tool, so that's going to be one of your have a go activities later. And branch allows children to create branching databases by dragging pictures onto the stage, and then it will ask them to sort by coming up with questions to sort those animals. And the last little bit of mix on our very quick whistle stop tour of JIT, should I say, is Mix. And Mix is our tool for creating ebooks. It's a really lovely tool. Children can use it to create little storybooks or to create topic books. And what it does is it will create a multi-page document collating work created in other JIT tools. Teachers can also use them to create little topic books by collating work from different students in one place. And we get some nice little collections of work that way. Okay, so that in a very quick nutshell is JIT. It's a nice easy one to go and have a look at. Most of it is quite obvious what it does and where it goes. J2E5 in terms of content creation is more aimed at your slightly older children. It's lovely because it has no formatting issues. I can click anywhere and type. I can resize that very easily. Put it wherever I want to. Children can add pictures to the page. You can do all sorts of different things in J2E5. I'll show you some of those later. But essentially we refer to it as our digital blank piece of paper, in that children can really do so many different things with it. And even for your younger children, you can use it to create activities and interactive activities for them to use and access without having to see all the kind of complex toolbars there. Okay, so there are the tools that you have when you access Just2Easy. In order to access Just2Easy, you should be able to access J2E from any device anywhere. So your Surface Pro, your phone. We even had children in the lockdowns who are accessing J2E on PlayStations. You can find J2E within your My School by the Launch panel, View All and Online Learning. And children will see this shortcut. And it's worth just mentioning that all your children should be preloaded and pre-sorted into registration classes for you. So you don't need to worry about any of that. If you're not already using the tools, you should just be able to pick them up and run with them with your class. You can also access them via j2e.com. And when you log into J2E, you will see your launch pad, your kind of landing page. Now, it will look like this, but the tiles, it is customizable. So the tiles will be a slightly different place. You can add them, you can remove them. A couple to just draw your attention to at this point. My Files is where all of your files are stored. So J2E is based on a cloud-based storage system with unlimited capacity. And in your My Files, you'll find every file that you've created, anything that you've had shared with you, any work that your children have created and saved. Files are simple to share and to collaborate with other users, other classes, and other schools. And the other tile to draw your attention to is the help tile. I'm aware that I'm going to be going at a bit of a pace today. And if you end up with questions after you finish that you think of tomorrow, the first place I would recommend you looking is the help tile. It's recently been updated. And there are lots of different videos and articles in there to help you with anything, any questions you might have, whether they're about the tool suite in general or how to use a particular tool. You should be able to find an answer in the help tile. Okay. So after that kind of quick introduction to what J2E is, I'm going to now show you in a little bit more depth an activity you can do in JIT, and we're going to use Animate. I will talk you through the activity and then I'll give you sort of 10 minutes or so to have a go at that activity, either whether you bring up another tab or whether you manage to get another device, just that you become a little bit more familiar with the tools if you haven't used them before. So I'm going to go into JIT and I'm going to click on the pink tab for Animate. And as I said before, Animate is our stop frame animation tool. It's a really popular one with children because it can create some really effective results. And the little animation that we're going to create today is going to be a snowy day animation. So first of all, we're going to choose our background. There's different ways we can do it, but the two I'd suggest for you today to choose from is either to choose a blank template, which will give you the option to paint a background on. So you could paint your own sort of snowy scene, or what I'm going to do is click on the iceberg template here. Now, that will load that as my background. And if you can see at the bottom here, there is a single black box on its own. If I click on that, it will highlight blue. That's my background. And while it's highlighted blue, I'm on my background frame. So anything I do to that now will be part of my background. So I could, for instance, stamp a little person onto my iceberg. And that's my background. That will appear in every frame. Once you've sorted your background, what we're going to do is add some white dots to create the effect of falling snow. So next to that background box, these are my frames. So I'm going to click on my first frame and I'm going to create some snow. Now I could just click on this white button here. I can change the size of my paintbrush. But you'll see, and if you're a perfectionist like I am, that the white of that is not the same as the white of the iceberg. So if I click on this, we have a colour picker at the bottom. And I have a lot of choices of colour, but what I can also do if I drag my cursor out is it will choose a colour to match from my screen. So I can click on that iceberg and it will create exactly that colour for me. Now you can use white, that would be absolutely fine, but I am a bit of a perfectionist, so I'm going to colour match. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to dot white dots all over the screen. I'm using a touch screen, which works really nicely, but it will work whatever you're doing. And as you can see, this is a really nice, easy activity for younger children. I could add a little layer of snow, sort of covering his boots as I do that if I like. Then I'm going to come down to my frame box again, and I'm going to click on the green plus button. That will add a new frame for me, and it will delete everything I did in the previous frame from this new frame. But what it will do is it will show me where I put those dots in the last frame, so that when I put my snow on my next frame, I can put them in different places. Nice, simple one, even for young children. And if I was doing this with children, I would get them to do sort of 8 to 10 frames for today, because this is a little bit time consuming. I'm just going to do 3 or 4 frames to show you how it works. I'll do the same again. I'll press that green plus button. I can see my onion skinning, we call it, which is that shadow of where I dotted the snow in the previous frame. And what this will do, hopefully when I put it all together, is create a lovely effect of falling snow. Let's cover his boots up a little bit more. If I press play for you here, you will see that effect. So that's going to be your first task. So I'm going to ask you to go into JIT to either load that iceberg background or to draw your own background in that background box, and then to dot some snow on a few different frames, just so that you get the hang of it. And I'll give you kind of just a bit less than 10 minutes to do that. Feel free at this point to unmute yourself, ask any questions, ask me to repeat anything. What I will do to help is show these instructions to talk you through what I've just talked you through. So I'll give you just a bit less than 10 minutes to have a go at that activity and see how you get on. If you manage to get through that quite quickly and you want to have a little explore in the rest of JIT, feel free to do that also. And a reminder to feel free to unmute yourself at this point and ask any questions that you might have. Just make sure that you can all unmute. There we go. And I'll bring those instructions back up again for you. Can you change the background a few times within a project? That is a really good question. I don't think that you can. Sophie, do correct me if I'm wrong. I think if you wanted to change the background within a project, you'd have to make that part of the frame, so you could change that. What you do have when you're working in Animate, obviously I showed you where the green plus button was. The red plus button allows you to copy the background and everything you've put in a frame. So you have different ways of copying the frames. So you could keep your background within the frames and change it that way. Sophie, does that sound correct?
Yeah, that's correct. You can't change the static background multiple times, but you can change the background by just creating one in the
individual frame.
Yeah, in the individual frame, and then copying that frame multiple times before changing it.
Does that answer your question? Good. I'll give you a couple more minutes on this one, and then I will show you how we can save it before we move on. Okay, so if you just stop what you're doing for now, just so that you know, from here, there's a couple of different ways you can save animations. For any piece of work in JIT, you can save the work as a working document by clicking on this orange circle in the top left-hand side here. That will save it, well, for you, that will save it into your My Files. As a child, it will save it into their My Files, but also into the teacher area of your, into the pupil area of your My Files. So if I just show you my Files here are all My Files. And on the left-hand side, I can see my pupils split by class and any work they've done in there. So your pupils' work will get saved into 2 places. So you can save your work as a working document. You can give it a title up here before you do that, I should say. If you manage to finish your animation, you can also save it as a GIF. So in the top right-hand corner of that staging area, you can save that that animation just as an animation on its own. So you can then use that elsewhere if you want to. So if I give you 1 more minute just to get your work saved and make sure that we're then ready to move on. Okay, just to give you a bit of a flavour of the kind of scope of Animate, these animations were also created in Animate. So for slightly older children here, we've created the water cycle, and you'll see at the top over the mountain, we actually have included that bit of snowy day animation, but just in a bit more of a complex format. This one here is a conversation. And this one here on the right hand side was created by using that red plus button I was talking about a minute or two ago. So in each frame, another music note was added to all of the ones that were there from the previous frames. So we have all sorts of different things we can do with Animate, and it is a lovely tool for using with older children also. So let's check. Lovely. Okay, we're going to move on to looking at another activity now. Obviously that one was suitable really for younger children, that particular one, but obviously with some expansion for older children. But we're now going to go into J2 data, and we're going to look at an activity for older children. Now, let's get rid of this. So within J2 data, we have some of the tools I talked about earlier, pictogram, chart and branch. But we also have database. And as it says on the tin, really, it is our tool for creating databases. Now, equally, there are uses of this for younger children, but we're going to look at an example for older children. So we can create databases in here, as can our children. We can work on them to create databases that way. But we also have a lovely set of examples in this example tab at the top of preloaded databases. So we have the data and we can just start working with our children straight away. And one of the really popular ones is the Titanic passenger list. So if I click on that, it will load that database. We'll come into the form view, but as you can see, there are over 1,300 records here. So that's not particularly useful to look at it in that view with this particular database. We could view it as a table. But again, even as a table, that is quite a lot of data to kind of scroll through to get through all that. So what we can also do is we can perform a search of the database. Now, we can do a simple search. So I could look for any passengers on the Titanic who had Helen in their name, for instance, and I can see there are 13. Oops, a daisy, excuse me. Or I can click on the little magnifying glass, and this is what I'm going to be asking you to do in the next activity, to perform an advanced search. So I could look here, for instance, for any passengers whose age is less than 18. That will show me records of 184 children on board the Titanic. And I can narrow that down even further. This last little box here will allow me to add an and or an or. So I'm going to add an and. So I'm looking now for any passengers who were under the age of 18 and who sadly died on the Titanic. So survivor or victim equal to victim. And I can now see the records of 103 children who died on the Titanic. Now, obviously, there's quite a lot of different search fields there to get our children to think about. So for your next activity, I'd like you to go into J2 data, come into this examples tab and load up the Titanic database. And I've got some questions here that I'd like you to have a go at using the database to answer, starting quite easy, getting a little bit trickier. And if you get through them, then maybe just have a think about what other questions you could ask your children to find out if you were doing this activity. So again, please do feel free to unmute yourself or pop in the chat. It's easy for me to see the chat when I'm not talking. Any questions that you have, any help that you need, this is the little button you're looking for to perform that advanced search. So into J2 data, database, load that example from the examples tab and have a go at seeing if you can answer some of these questions. And we'll spend probably about another 10 minutes or so on this. Okay, I'll just give you another minute or two and then we'll move on. Okay, so if you want to stop what you're doing, the last little bit of database to just show you at this point is that the next tab along is the chart tab, and we can create charts from the data in our databases. So we can create nice simple charts, such as I could create a pie chart to show where passengers boarded. Or the XY data won't work quite so well with this particular database, but I could group that into seeing where passengers boarded, for instance, by gender. To make it slightly more complicated, I can take these charts and I can save them as an image for use elsewhere. By clicking on this camera in the bottom left-hand corner here. And I can use that, for instance, in J2E5. So if I take you back into J2E5 and open up a Titanic presentation that we have here, this will also just give you a bit more of an idea about what you can do in J2E5. So this presentation has been created here. We've got text and pictures. This is an animation that was saved as a GIF from Animate and added to the presentation. We can embed videos from elsewhere into our presentations. And on this page, you can see we already have a graph, but just to show you what I can do now I've saved that graph from database, is it will appear in my picture library, which I can find from this green little portrait button in the top toolbar here. And there's that, that chart that I've just saved. And I can simply drag it onto the page, resize it like that. I could crop it a bit if I want to. And I can do some writing next to it to discuss it. Again, just like with JIT, I've got this floppy disk to click save. And the other thing I can do, as was the same for JIT, is the little globe button next to the floppy disk allows me or children to publish their work to the class blog. Now, as a child, that would have to be moderated by you as a teacher first. But once that has been published, it would appear in J2 Webby here, which is our class blog. So going to move on now. Just to show you before we move on, actually, here are some other pieces of work that have been created in J2E5, just to give you hopefully an idea of the scope of the tool. So the first, we have a shape poem, really nice and easy to create because of the way that we can just, each line of this was typed separately, so we could reorientate it, change the colour and make our poem look like what we're describing. Here we have a response to some learning about space travel, where an appropriate background and font has been chosen, and children have been very easily able to line up the pictures and the text to make it look how they want it to. And the last one, I don't know if you can quite see, is actually a collage of a tree made up of lots of different pictures of leaves. And the leaves were created in JIT paint, because one of the backgrounds in JIT paint is actually a transparent background that allows you to put a photograph on and remove the background, save it as an image and use those images in J2E5 to copy over and over again and create this collage. Quite time consuming, but very effective in the end. Okay. I talked a minute ago about how children can share their work on the class blog, but we've recently done a collaboration with Newsdesk, and I'm going to play you a video now because children can also add work that they have created in J2E into their news desk reports. So the video I'm going to play you now will show you basically how to do that, and it's by finding the embed code for a piece of work that children have done and copying and pasting that into their news desk report. So I'm just going to show you this to give you an idea of how you can use J2E elsewhere. Please do shout if you can't see or hear this. Okay, so hopefully that would be helpful for you and your children also. We'll make sure that video goes into the help desk too, so that you can kind of have another look at that if that's something that is of interest to you. Okay, just going to get rid of a few tabs. Okay. I'm going to show you just quickly before we finish 2 more bits of the tool suite, which hopefully will be some of the quickest wins of all for you. First of all, we have J2 Blast, which are our competitive gaming tools for spelling and times tables. So Blast can be found on your Launchpad. And the nice thing about this one is that children can use this without you having to do anything else. You could just go into your classroom tomorrow and get them to start using it, and that it would work that way. But you do have some controls in there too. So the most useful ones for you are going to be Spell Blast and TT Blast, which is Times Tables Blast. They both work in the same way, really, in that children can choose to go live and they can play against other children in the world. And the way that that works is that they'll start off at the kind of lowest level, but the computer will learn as they're getting it right and make it harder and harder until they get to the right level for them. And it will remember that every time they go in. So they will be working on questions that are at an appropriate level for them. Or they can click to have a practice. Now for times tables, they would literally choose which times tables they wanted to work on. For spelling, we start with some kind of phonics and going up through the year groups here. And I'm going to choose a nice easy one to demonstrate how it works, which is they
care. Take care.
They click to load the list, they hear it read aloud, they have a go at typing it.
June. It's hot in June.
They get it wrong.
June. It's hot in June.
So it's as simple as that. Children can just go and use it. But as I said, as a teacher, you do have a few things you can do, which is for spellings. You can click on where it says ABC to add a spelling list for your children, share that with them, and they can use that in the practice mode. So if you set spellings for your children every week, for instance, that might be a nice way to do that. You can also click on the little graph here to view how your children are getting on. And also at the bottom here, you can print a certificate for them. So that's BLAST. And the last thing we're going to look at today is the newest part of our tool suite, which is the library. And we're really proud of this one. It's a collection of, I think at the moment, about 800 resources, but it's ever growing. At the moment, we've added most of the resources, but you can also add into this too. And resources on all sorts of different topics for all sorts of different ages. So the way it works is we can search the library. I could either do a text-based search. So for instance, I think it's World Space Week this week, so I could look for some resources on space travel. I could see we've got these here. If I see a resource that I like, I can click on it, find out more about that resource. Children will only see the task and the instructions. They won't ever see anything from the teacher attachments or the teacher notes. So that means that some of them will have answer sheets in, that kind of thing. We can click to view the task itself. They're not all in J2E5, a lot of them are. We can click to like resources that we like, and that will save it into our liked resources area for later. Oops, a daisy. We can, let's go back into this one. We can share it with children or groups of classes. We can also set it as homework, which will send it to the J2 homework function. We can also search for, say, any resources for 7 to 8 year olds in English and see the resources that we have there. We have all, various tags we can click on at the bottom too. Within anything else to show you, so within my resources, we see any resources that we've created, and we have the ability to create resources ourselves too, which you can either keep for yourself or you can publish to share with other teachers. And we can see any resources that have been shared with us within the library. A child's view of the library is that they will only see resources that have been shared with them. So they don't have access to everything that's in there. They have access to what's been shared there with them. So that is the library. Really nice one, hopefully finding resources that you can just use. We've tried to really make your life easy, but also tried to come up with things that will inspire learning for your children. And that is, I think, about all I have to say today. So before I take any questions, if you have any, a reminder that for further support, first of all, you've got the help tile. Just2easy.com is the kind of main company website. There is help available there too. Feel free to email support@j2e.com. We do pride ourselves on getting back to you and getting that support to you as you need it. And the other one is to follow us on Twitter. We are working quite hard with our Twitter right now, and every week we are uploading resources that you might be interested in, little tips and tricks videos to show you new things about the tool suite that you might not have found out about so far. So if you are on Twitter, do give us a follow. We also have schools sharing with us the kinds of things that they've been doing in their classes. Beyond that, what's next? Well, we obviously have recorded the session today, so we will upload that to the Just2Easy website under news and webinars C2K if you want to watch that back. There are previous webinars in there too, so you can have a look through any of those if you are interested. If you've enjoyed today's session, we have a part 2 session of this webinar, and that's going to be looking at the an introduction to the kind of teacher-led tools, so message, stars, homework, and the parent portal. We have 2 sessions for that on the 17th and the 26th of October. So please do book in if you think that would be of interest for you. Alternatively, if you are interested in training specifically for your school, if you want to train whole staff teams or anything like that, please do get in touch and we'll see what we can do. If there's anything specific you want to find out about that you'd like specific training on, that is something we can look to accommodate for you. And that's all I have to say today. So thank you so much for coming. I hope it's been helpful, and please, I'll be around for the next 5 minutes or really however long you need to answer any questions that you might have, show you anything that you'd like me to show you. So thank you very much. Any questions?